skin? Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate, you should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God.
Again, my name is Weatherspoon, and this is the Gilchrist Experience. I am very pleased to be sitting in the presence of an illuminary, a Juris Doctorate who has no peers, in my opinion, an old friend, a good friend, none other than attorney at war, Alton.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Maybe I should rest my case right now. After that great introduction.
We've been trying to get to you for a long time, man. This is going to be well spent.
Absolutely.
I like to go back to the early days,
okay,
to little Alton in Georgia, and get a little background on. You're a preacher's kid, right?
Yeah. Right.
Give us a little background on the early days of your life before we fast forward.
Okay. Well, actually, I was really born in Michigan, and so I spent the first early days there. My mother was a teacher, and through her logic, she concluded that I would be better off going to school in the South. And of course, it was segregated, and this was Brown versus Board of Education. And so most of the buildings there were very dilapidated. There was no indoor plumbing. There was no janitorial service. There was no cafeterias. Any of the things that are commonly associated with elementary school. But I think that my mother had the insight to recognize that the key ingredient in education was love. And obviously she felt as though that the kind of love that I would get in those schools in the South was far superior than the education I would have received in Michigan. So we moved back to Georgia, Jim Crow, Georgia. And that's where I remained until about the 6th grade. I went up to Dayton, Ohio for a couple of years, and then I came back to Georgia. And then I graduated from high school in Cayuga County, Georgia.
Okay. Now, what prompted you to study law? Who or what prompted you to study law?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about growing up in the rural South, I lived in the county adjacent to Fulton County, where Atlanta is located. And back in the 50s, there was not that much entertainment. I mean, there was no, television was just coming out, in the South. I mean, maybe like 51, 52. And, it was very embryonic, it wasn't developed at all, really. You rarely saw a black person on television, maybe Amos and Andy,
Oh, yeah.
Right,
Course,
right,
Well,
and,
I don't know.
Right, yeah. So, it was, so really, people had to make their own entertainment, really. And, on Sundays, after church, people would, go through there, spill, eat at somebody's house, usually my grandparents' house. But beyond that, there was a lot of storytelling. And then often there would be cases in which a black person was accused of some crime involving a white person as the alleged victim. And in some of those cases, people actually went to Atlanta to get a lawyer, because they clearly knew that the white lawyers in the county were too closely associated with the courthouse. And so they went to Atlanta. And basically, I remember in the 50s, a lawyer by the name of Donald Hollowell, who, in fact, I think made his transition last year. I happened to see him actually before he made it, in Atlanta. But he was somewhat legendary, and I remember a particular case, a person lived across the street from me who had worked for a white grocer, and he had made his runs and then went home thinking that he'd get an hour's sleep and then run back to the grocery store and do some other deliveries. As it turned out, he overslept. And this was a Saturday, it was a busy day, and people called us, "Where's my groceries?" You know, and he was asleep. And so when he got back, the owner of the store, you know, and him got into some struggles, and then the son of the owner got into the struggle, and as a result of that, racial epithets, you know, words changed, and then him being outnumbered, he pulled out his a knife and went to work, you know. And I would imagine that if most people who really did not know of the South and the fact that it wasn't monolithic in what happens, you know, you would say, well, I know that brother got lynched, you know, right off the bat, you know. But actually, where I grew up, at the time that I grew up, it wasn't really that bad because you had a sheriff in the county by the name of Lamar Potts. And basically, back then in Georgia, he was legendary. He didn't even walk around with a gun. You know, if you just saw him, he'd just be an average person.
Andy Griffith.
Right, yeah, you know what I mean? And he was that well respected. As a matter of fact, Johnny Cash played him in a movie, Murder in Coyote County. But he was so well respected that he didn't have to carry a gun at all. And I mean, and there were no Ku Klux Klan or anything like that, you know, because he wouldn't permit it. Now, Noonan prior to that had a very sordid racial history, but by the time he became sheriff, you know, it has an impact who the sheriff is, you know, sort of, and he was just that kind of person. So my friend across the street did not get his mother, and he went to see a lawyer, and they told the lawyer that, you know, I just cut somebody, and you know, I got to go to court, and et cetera, et cetera. And so the lawyer said, well, don't worry about it, you know, we'll take care of it, you know, and I'll go down and see the judge. And
he didn't know those stories.
He didn't know those stories. And, you know, I'm not going to use all the words that the lawyer used, but, you know, he said, you know, why didn't you tell me you just cut a white man? Right. You know what I mean? And so, make a long story short, you know, he knew then that he had to get out of there to get a lawyer. And came and got Donald Hollowell. Interesting, Donald Hollowell tried that case roughly before all-white jury, and beat everything but a simple assault. And when Hollowell finished the case, he said, well, you know what? He said, I'd like to take this case on up to the Georgia Supreme Court. And so this guy said, no, Mr. Hollowell, let well enough alone. You know what I mean?
Right. I'll take what I got.
Yeah, I take what I got, you know, for fear that maybe that they would take all that back. Yeah, reverse it, you know. Yeah. So he took that and ran, you know. But, you know, after that, there were other persons, you know, who followed the same lineage. And then you had a C.B. King down in Albany, Georgia, who was very much involved in the Albany movement. And when Dr. King came down there, he was the lawyer, you know, for that whole movement. The King brother, one of the brothers actually went to London for a while because he resisted the draft, you know, and he came back recently, you know, and they got that straightened out. But he was someone else that I admired, you know. And as a matter of fact, when I started University of Georgia Law School, and C.B. King up in 1980 was running for governor of Georgia. And so I actually brought him over to the law school. I mean, not in 1970. I started Georgia in 1969. So I brought him over to the law school. So he was really probably the first black who's ever spoke at the University of Georgia Law School. But C.B. King also was so legendary because when he tried a case, literally C.B. knew every word in the English dictionary and could handle every word, you know, very fluently, you know, very majestically. He was very adroit with words, and the story goes, which was actually true, that sometime when CB would take a case, and a lot of these cases be in little rural counties in South Georgia, CB would be standing up arguing a motion before the judge, you know, and every so often CB would drop a big word out. And the jury said, wait a minute, CB, wait a minute, you know, and he would open his dictionary, you know, then start looking, what that word you said, you know, and so, you know, spell that word for me, you know, and then he would spell the word, the judge would look at it, you know, and they would take off. So that was really the state of affairs, you know, with legal practice back during that time. And obviously the black lawyers, many of them were just great lawyers, you know, during that period. And I think that really had an impact on me. Because you really need a role model. Yeah. You know, you really, I mean, to understand what you really have to do in the profession. If your parents are not in that, you know, my mother was educated, my father was a preacher, so you know I couldn't get it there. And I remember I spent a lot of time in Atlanta. My mother, my mother's sister, did not live too far from what was then called Hunter Street. It has now been renamed M.L. King Drive. You know, and that's where Pascal's and all those big places were.
Down there
and right, absolutely, that was the centerpiece of the movement. You know, if you were looking for somebody in Atlanta, you just go up on Hunter Street then, you know, and look for the person, they would be there. And I remember a lawyer, particularly Howard Moore, back in the 60s, and Howard would come over to Pascal sometime late at night, and you know, and I would sit down and talk to him, and you know, and then he said, well, I'm getting ready to leave now. I'll see you later. I said, where you going back? You going home? You know, because it was about 11 or 12. He said, no, I'm going back to the office. And I said, man, you working that late? You know, he said, I always work that late, 3 or 4 o'clock. So when I started practicing here, I first would, you know, after the office was shut down, because I was over 125th Street, Legal Services. So everybody would be leaving at 5 o'clock, you know, and then they said, well, Maddox, why are you still there? I said, well, I can't leave at 2 o'clock the next morning. And they said, well, what do you mean you can't leave 2 o'clock anymore? I said, well, you know, I just know that in order to be a good lawyer, you got to stay here 2 or 3 o'clock the next morning. Okay. And so eventually I began to learn why you had to stay there, you know. But I forced myself to do that from the beginning.
Well, you know, people don't know this, but what you're saying is the truth. And it is truth for you. Because I know when we were in Poughkeepsie, court was over.
Right.
By 4:30, 4:45. Press conference.
Right.
Dinner.
Yep.
And if you weren't coming back down to the city, I know you went back to your room.
Absolutely.
To prepare through the night for the next
morning. Right.
And I also know that your preparation was so adept that it was of assistance to the other co-counsel in the court. So I want the people to understand that Alton is not just throwing something out here. This is exactly the way that he lives.
Yeah. And, you know, and basically what happened there, back in that case you're referring to, is Pagonis versus Maddox, Mason, Sharpton, and Brawley. I was actually the lead defendant, you know, and usually the lead defendant is the most culpable of the group. That's how they line you up, you know. So if it's people versus A, B, C, D, A is listed as the most culpable and therefore become the lead defendant, which means that A always examines first, you know. And so that really strategically helped us. As a matter of fact, Pagonis' lawyer said later that he wished that he had never even included me in the lawsuit, you know, and certainly didn't want to include me as a lead, you know, as a lead, you know, lead person, because I was going pro se, you know. So there are a lot of ways that you can sort of get around things, and that sort of helped us out in Pagonis versus Maddox et al.
You know, I was so honored when Minister Brown called me to come up because there were problems. That whole county. It was like going back in time. And I had my doubts about this case. Honestly. I didn't really follow it that closely. And I said, well, let me go up and maybe I'll learn something. And I believe me, I did. I did, because Tawana was most definitely raped, sodomized, victimized, and traumatized emotionally and psychologically. But seeing you, and I'll never forget, when you were to cross-examine Stephen Pagonis, that day, federal magistrates showed up. Attorneys showed up. It was a parade of who's who in the Dutchess County Courthouse. And those folks, as they came in, I remember Judge, what was his name, Hickman?
Hickman, S. Barrett Hickman.
he's looking at the men that are walking in,
Right.
and I'm sure he's recognizing them.
Right.
And they all come and sit
Right. Yeah.
on our side of the court.
Right.
And just how you meticulously shredded Stephen Pagonis.
Right.
And I was amazed when you took the ledger, one of the 6 or 7 binders that were there, and you had asked him a question, and he was ranting and raving and said, and I remember you didn't look at him. You addressed him, but you didn't look at him, and you said, you know, basically, you're acting like a lunatic, and you have to convince the jury that you're not crazy.
Right.
But when he denied having made the statement,
Right.
you calmly walked over to the table, got the binder, told him to turn the page 1248, paragraph 2, line 3, and see if that refreshes his recollection. And after reading it, he blurted out an explicative we can't repeat. And everybody in the court jumped, and then they laughed, and he said, yes, I did say that. And I looked at the faces of the people, and I know they said, how in the world does this Negro know exactly on what page, what paragraph, and line the answer to this question is?
Right.
And that case, it was really, it was a kangaroo court.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right down to the clerk of the court.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, see, the thing about it is, first of all, just to give some backdrop here, this was a case where they brought in Dutchess County because the plaintiff in New York can have a preference. So the plaintiff can choose to bring a case where the plaintiff resides. And that basically assists the plaintiff because in a case like that, you know, you're 100-some miles away from New York. So you're basically arguing your case to his people, you know. So he has that advantage. So one, he had the advantage of the jury. But two, what they did, they actually disqualified every judge in Dutchess County and brought Hickman in from Putnam, which is also the location where George Pataki resided. You know, and so there was a lot of other interconnections, which made it incumbent upon Hickman to try to steer the case in a certain direction. You know, and that's where the real tragedies are, because the same thing happened in Central Park where you had Galligan, who was assigned, I believe he came out of the Bronx, you know, we down here in Manhattan, to steer that case, you know, in a certain direction, because he was supposed to have been hard-nosed. So one of the real problems in the system is that the people in power are able to manipulate all of the pieces, you know, to try to get something that's favorable to them. And then you not only have to know your case, but you have to also outmaneuver the strategies and tactics that they're employing, you know, to get a result.
Yes.
Because it's not really a truthful result, you know, it's just a winning result. You know, and everybody's satisfied who wins, but you're not really caught up in what the truth was. So it makes it very difficult for you to actually try those cases if you're not well prepared, because you have so many strikes against you from the beginning.
Could you give our listeners a litany of the facts that you were able to establish in this case, and why it was that you taunted Stephen Pagonis to the point of taking or engaging you in a case?
Well, you know, the thing about it was actually when the Brawley case, when she was found in November of '87, you know, nobody knew at that particular time. Of course, she from the beginning said it was a white cop, you know, right from the beginning, and then they started this investigation. But you know, obviously, it just appeared as though the investigation wasn't going right, and then all of a sudden, Harry Chris is found dead, and then they said it was a suicide, you know. And in fact, Robert Abrams, the state attorney general, said it's absolutely is a suicide, and that Maddox is lying about it being a murder, and that, you know, at the end of this, we're going to take his license, you know, for misleading the public. Now, so that was one critical aspect of the case. The other critical aspect was the whole question whether Stephen was involved or not, you know. Now, as it relates to the suicide, they literally suppressed the autopsy report from '87 to '98. I mean, they literally suppressed it. But all at the same time, they were telling the public that it was absolutely a suicide, that there was a love note, you know, and that he killed himself, he was distraught, and the whole bit. And all that time, we were trying to get discovery of an autopsy report. Now, that's very basic. I mean, even in a criminal case, you know, it's basic, it's the autopsy report. Now, as you know, in civil cases, discovery is a lot more liberal,
right,
you know. But even in a criminal case, we would have got an autopsy report. But for them to suppress the report for all that time, and then when they finally had to give it up, I mean, it wasn't like they, you know, they just had to give it up. And then when we looked at the autopsy report, it said exactly what I said, that, hey, this was a homicide. Now, there's a significant distinction here because there is no statute of limitation on homicide.
Right.
Which means that the only inference you can draw is that Abram was trying to protect somebody and make sure that nobody prosecuted them ever, all right, for a homicide, all right? And so as a result of that, the doctor who examined Chris was Dr. Alexander Plaska. And so once we got the autopsy report, you know, I went to see him, and I said, Dr. Plaska, I'm sure that, you know, State Attorney General Robert Abrams has inquired of you before. He said, no, I never met the man. And I said, well, you never been subpoenaed to come before the grand jury? No, I've never been. Nobody said nothing to me. You know what I mean? And I'm saying, well, you know, but you didn't do the autopsy. I absolutely did the autopsy. So we brought him in. He said, look, yeah, I did the autopsy. There was no gun. There was no suicide note. There was no gunpowder residue on his hands, you know, and any other thing that were indicia of somebody having killed himself. And there was no way that I could come to any other conclusion other than that he died at the hands of somebody else.
I remember the photograph you showed me.
Right.
You said they're only giving us 2 Polaroids. They wouldn't give us the crime scene
No,
photos, nothing.
no, they wouldn't get none of that.
And you said, I got to know, you know.
Right.
I can't call the medical examiner.
Right.
I don't know what he's going to say.
Yeah, well, you know, the thing about it was, which was very helpful too, because this was sort of like a community defense, you know, I mean, in a real sense, because we had to spend a lot of money up there right from the beginning. I mean, it cost us to stay up there, and also I should note for history buffs that this was the longest civil trial in history of New York.
That's right.
I mean, this case started in November and went to August, all right? So, and we were up there all that time, and you had to pay for rooms every night, food, and just a whole bit. So you were literally way up in the 6 figures, you know, just doing that. And then there was a lot of complicated medical reports and all that kind of stuff, ballistic reports and all of that. So we really had a community operation. You know, you were there, others in law enforcement who had that background, people who had medical backgrounds, you know, other backgrounds. Yeah, absolutely. You know, everybody just came together, you know, and it really amazed people up there to see all of these blacks, you know, with all these different backgrounds, you know, coming together and to putting together this kind of impressive defense, you know. And it's something that they would never forget up in Dutchess County.
I don't think so.
No, they won't.
I remember, it was Stanton.
Yeah,
Stanton,
absolutely, William Stanton.
I remember when William Stanton said, we're going to put an end to this, this libel and this slander, I have the medical records, and he's ready, and he slams them down on the podium, and he breaks the seal, and he starts to read the medical report relative to Tawana Brawley's condition when she was found. And I remember how he looked over at Pagonis with such contempt. And didn't some of the women ask for a recess?
Yeah.
Because they were so emotionally upset.
Yeah. You
see, and these are the things that the press never
they never wrote about. Cut the whole case. I mean, we could be up there, and all of the factious things that would be taking place there, you could talk about 10, 11 months, all the factious things that were coming out, if there was something sensational, they would report it. I mean, if somebody walked down the street nude, you know, that would be the story of the case. Everybody ran out of the courthouse to watch this person. See the naked person. I mean, that's how crazy.
And they called it a circus.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? That's how crazy it was up there. So we never got to really get the real facts out. I mean, this was one of those cases where I said that court TV would have been a welcome. You know, because if people could have seen that on court TV, you know, I mean, well, I don't know how long they would have kept that on court TV. You know what I mean? You know, but if it could have been forced, the plug is broken. Right? Yeah, absolutely. You know, but if it could have been forced to stay on there, you know, it would have been a whole different ball game because, you know, it obviously damaged reputations. You know, it certainly damaged my reputation. You know, in terms of just having a headline, this man perpetrated a hoax, you know what I mean? Began when Tawana was found, her family reached out. I did not respond. Sonny Carson, found out. He then contacted me. I said, well, look, I told the family, because you got to remember, we were just finishing Howard Beach. All right, so, we already just had a lot of work on our hands, So I told the family, I said, look, what I would suggest you do is, first of all, just go and see an independent gynecologist, because she had literally not been in that hospital any time, you know what I mean? The first, so I don't know anything else to do. I don't know the gynecologist, but we get a gynecologist. The gynecologist have her come in. She goes in. The gynecologist looks at her and then said she should go down to Westchester County Medical Center. Now, all this is totally out of my control. All right? She go down to Westchester County Medical Center, and they said, hey, she's been raped. All right? These are not people that I know. It's Westchester County Medical Center.
You didn't utter it. You weren't the first to utter it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So they say she's been raped. So then the community said, well, you got to represent all of that. But as far as I was concerned, at that point, I had a substantial foundation. I mean, I had medical opinions. I had a gynecologist, and I had a Westchester County Medical Center. I mean, how many more do you need? Right. And all that's on the medical report. Now, when we get to trial, Abrams says, without any evidence, well, they made a mistake. They really put something else in this. I don't know what they put in there, but this just ain't true. Well, I mean, how do you go from that to me perpetrating the hoax? I mean, which is exactly what they said. I mean, so I tell everybody, in order to prove that I did something wrong, you have to show that I literally controlled all of this, none of which I did control. I could control the medical profession. Even at the first hospital that Tawana was taken to, which is suspicious as why she was taken there, but Stephen Pagonis' arson investigator came in, got the rape kit, and we never found it again.
Never saw the rape kit again.
Never saw it again. You know what I mean? But
now let me explain for the folks at home what a rape kit is. It's a forensic kit which is used in sexual assault cases. They will take cotton swabs of the genital area to find semen, and even now today we are looking for sweat to get DNA. They will comb the pubic area to detect any hairs that may have come off of the assailant. They will also get into the vaginal area to retrieve semen, and also to determine if there are any communicable diseases that have been transmitted. And I remember in the medical report it said that she had congealed blood clots around the pubic area from the assault. You can't fake these things.
Sure, absolutely.
On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being dead, 10 being healthy, they said she was a 3. There were no drugs in her system. Her eyes were dilated. You can't fake. Those things cannot be faked by a 15-year-old or a 55-year-old.
By a medical person that don't even know her.
Precisely.
You know what I mean? They just drove up there and, and that was a body, and they just dealt with it, So, there was nothing that can show the conspiracy on our part, at all. The conspiracy was those who were trying to essentially cover this up, and every time that they did something that they couldn't explain, it was just simply dismissed.
We have a technical moment.
No, I just wanted to ask a question.
Oh. Okay, Winston is behind the camera. Go ahead, Winston. Go ahead, Winston.
I'm just curious about when did you have an opportunity to tell your story?
Well,
I mean, have you ever had this opportunity that you're having now to tell the complete story of the Tawana Ball?
No, well, as a matter of fact, it has basically been banned from the media. I mean, just recently, Stephen Pagonis was on Fox News.
Yes.
And he implicated me, called my name, and claimed I did all these things, which was a mistake on his part, because he had basically been trying to avoid bringing me up. Because, see, what Pagonis understood is that the jury never found in his favor against me. Which is why, at this very moment, I can say the very same thing that I said on March 13, 1988, which caused all the uproar when I held this press conference. And, the whole world was there. And I said then Stephen Pagonis was involved in the rape and kidnapping to Warner Brothers. Now, when I said that, everybody went crazy. I mean, the governor of the state went crazy. The state attorney general went crazy. Everybody went crazy, saying that, you know, something got to be done to this man for besmirching this fine young man's reputation like that. All right. Now,
what was his position at the time, Steve McGone?
Steve McGone was an assistant district attorney in the district attorney's office in Dutchess County, and that was the reason why.
He had some clout.
His father, well, in fact, he has a lot of clout because because his uncle now is a surrogate in Dutchess County. Now, the surrogate is really the most powerful judicial position in a county because that's where you deal all the wealth. You know, where inheritances, trusts, and all of that. That's where you actually appoint lawyers, you know, who make commissions, you know, off of representing a state. So that's a very powerful position, and that's the position his uncle had. Now, he also had a father who was a judge. You know. He had another relative who was a judge, and he had other members who were city councilors in areas up there. So they were well connected in that county.
Now, Alton, remember when we were trying to get the FBI agent to come in and testify?
Yeah.
Could you tell the folks about that little oddity?
You know, and the funny thing about it, you know, it was a female, and actually, when Tawana was first interviewed by law enforcement, an interview that everybody said never took place, all right, which was literally 2 days after she was in the hospital. You know, she had this interview with FBI, county, state, you know, local police. All these people came to her house. Now, after that, that interview didn't take place. You know what I mean? The only thing we knew was that that never happened. Now, I wasn't in the case then, all right? So, you know, we had no actual proof, all right, of, you know, anything happening as far as documentation. But as it turned out, we called the FBI agent to the witness stand, who was a female, and we asked her, you know, I mean, you ask some general questions sometimes you don't necessarily know the answer to, and most people tell you don't ask a question you don't know the answer to, but sometimes the answer won't hurt you, so you ask it anyway, you know what I mean? So, you know, the one of the questions we asked was, do you have a prior relationship with Stephen Pagonis, you know? And you expect that she would say no, you know, because she's probably the civil rights investigator, FBI agent, all that. And she says, yes, I do. And I said, well, what is that relationship? She said, that's my boyfriend.
Say again?
That's my boyfriend.
Who was her boyfriend?
Stephen Pagonis.
Pagonis.
The guy who was a
FBI agent?
Right. And she's in charge of the civil rights investigation, all right? And
I mean, where did she tell you this?
Under oath, in court.
In court?
Right. Yeah, that's actual testimony of that. Right.
That's unbelievable.
Well, absolutely unbelievable. I mean, you know, first of all, we didn't know that there was ever an interview, you know, one way or the other. But then for her to say, well, yeah, I mean, that's my boyfriend. We were very close. You know, we dated.
Now, they were dating at the time of the incident, but at the time of the trial, Stephen had married.
Right.
He married somebody else.
Somebody else.
But back at the time that the incident took place, they were dating.
Right.
Oh, my goodness.
All right. And,
wow.
and, you know, I mean, it just was, you know, and her name was Koga. You know, I mean, I remember her last name was Koga, FBI agent Koga.
What happens now when we expose all this stuff?
Well, you know, what has literally happened, I tell you, the state has become so sensitive to this case because they won't even release the files. See, that's when you really know it's a cover-up. Because when you have police files, which are literally 20 years old now, you know what I mean? Yeah. And they are still sealed. On a case supposed to be a hoax. I mean, what could you possibly be hiding, you know, if you already claimed that the girl perpetrated a hoax? I mean, so don't these files support, you know, your claim that she perpetrated a hoax? Now, we're trying to see these files, and they would not release the files. In fact, you know, it's very interesting, so you know this. I have been involved in all kinds of litigation, and I'm in federal court right now.
Okay.
And you know, I sued all the judges and everybody, you know. Right. And it's not an easy case to win, but mine is. You know, most lawyers who try these kind of cases don't win them. You know, I just know that I'm going to win this one, all right? Now, I know that there's going to be some hanky-panky, and it has been because when I filed a lawsuit, against everybody, immediately they assigned a judge to my case without my being present at the selection. Because in federal court, you have to be present when a judge is chosen. All right? So they just chose this judge. I said, wait a minute, how y'all do this? And I objected to it. And so they said, well, okay, we'll do it right this time, next time. and they came up and they actually got a judge by the name of Nina Gershon. Now, even the clerks in the court said that day, they said, well, you got a pretty good judge now, Nina Gershon. And so I went before her, and she laid out what her concerns were to all the parties and told us to research and brief, those issues. And we did all that over a long period of time. And I noticed that she just wouldn't come up with a ruling. You know what I mean? And when you have dotted every I, crossed every T, and when the law is absolutely, the letter of the law is absolutely in your favor. Right. You know all of that. And so, I'm saying, well, wait, she won't even, make a decision. So then finally, and by that time, there was a lot of other people had gotten involved in this case because federal judges are appointed by the U.S. Senate. I mean, they're nominated, and they have to be approved, confirmed by the U.S. Senate, nominated by the president, And so, and I know there was some senators on the U.S. Judiciary Committee had been involved in this case, you know what I mean? And see, the real problem is, although federal judges have lifetime appointments, but if you are a U.S. District Court judge, all right, you also want to be elevated. But, although you might stay in the federal system for the rest of your life, but you may just be there as a district court judge. So, at some point you may want to be elevated to the United States Court of Appeal, and, like everybody else, people figure someday they may become a member of the U.S. Supreme Court. Right. But if you get a bad mark, ain't nothing getting ready to happen. So, for whatever reason, Judge Gershon one day writes me a letter and says, Ms. Matt, I had to recuse myself. I said, wait a minute. The law does not allow you to just recuse yourself without reason. Right. And nobody has made a motion for you to recuse yourself, So, I mean, what is this about? All right? So, they then, said, well, okay, well, anyway, she recused herself. And I'm saying, wait a minute, you just can't recuse yourself like that, but anyway, that's what we're doing. So they get her off the case. So here I am now. I get another notice that we got another judge. And in this other judge, we get the name of the judge. I didn't know the name of the judge. I do some research and found it was Bob Law's former law partner.
Bob Law?
Bob Abrams.
Oh, okay.
Bob Abrams. All right. Former law partner.
A setup.
All right? So, I write him a letter back and said, look, how in the world are you going to allow Bob Abrams, former law partner, adjudicate this case? And so they then said nothing. Now, in the meantime, while I'm waiting for an answer from that, I get another judge who sent me a court decision that said we're dismissing your case. But we're not dismissing your case on all of the issues that you have briefed. Because on all the issues that you briefed, on all the issues that Nina Gershon asked you to brief, we find that all of those arguments have merit. But I have found some new issues. And I'm ruling against you on those issues. Now, I haven't been given an opportunity to know what those issues are, right? I haven't been given an opportunity to argue those issues before this judge. If the judge walked in here right now and said we were all under arrest, I wouldn't know who the judge was. You know what I mean? I literally never seen this judge, all right? May not ever even exist, all right? So here we are now. The case is dismissed. That was like about 4 months ago. I filed a notice of appeal to the United States Court of Appeal for the Second Circuit. Just yesterday, I get an order back from the United States Court of Appeal for the Second Circuit. Now, I'm not asking them at that point that there's any judicial irregularity, because by this time, I just said, well, look, in the appeal process, I'll raise those issues. I just won't say anything about it. Now, I just get up there. Well, the appellate court on its own, in an order that I just received yesterday, saying we are sending this case back to the United States District Court.
The appeals court.
That's what the appeals court said, because of certain irregularity that they did not comply with. So that's where we are now, but that was just yesterday.
So Pagonis has that much clout. Is that what you're telling
Absolutely.
me?
Absolutely. Because you see, the thing about it, you got to remember is this. See, each one of these counties are very important. And Dutchess County is a very important county. Okay? Because you got IBM up there.
All right.
All right?
Without breaking any laws,
Okay.
could you tell us actually what happened to
Okay.
Tawana, rather?
Well, it was very, very simple. Tawana was...
She was walking across the street.
Well,
and these
actually,
guys were sitting outside the car?
what happened was that Tawana had gone to Newburgh.
Right.
All right, and you know, just like teenagers are, she was supposed to have been in school, and she, you know, got on the bus to get back home.
What time of day was this?
Well, this is about 7 o'clock or so at night, 6, 7 at night.
So it wasn't late in the morning?
No, when it was very dark because you're talking about November.
So she wasn't out partying?
Oh, no. Everybody, there was no claim of her party. It was just her claim of going to see somebody, you know, and not being in school. No, not being in school, going to see somebody, and then trying to hustle back home to get back home before, you know, the parents and everybody, you know, knew what was happening. All right? But now this is not my testimony now. This is just a guy by the name of Edwin Garcia.
Okay.
Edwin Garcia is a friend of Stephen Pagonis, a former state trooper.
Okay.
Okay. Edwin Garcia writes us a letter and says that I would like to see either you or Reverend Sharpton because Stephen Pagonis is not telling y'all the truth.
Okay.
Okay? And I go all the way up to the Canadian border. I forget.
That was a long.
Yeah, it's right up there, going toward.
Onondaga? Was it Onondaga?
No, it's I forget the name of this prison, but it's a well-known prison up there, you know. But it's right there on the Canadian border, like if you're going toward Montreal. So I go up there to see him, you know.
Okay.
And so we have a discussion. He said, Mr. Maddox, he said, that night, Pagonis didn't have an alibi, and his wife is not going to testify in his favor, as he is claiming, because she's not going to put her own self at jeopardy. All right. Now, he had told everybody that she was going to alibi him.
Right.
Well, she never did.
Okay.
She never did. And Garcia's told us then. He said, now what happened is that Pagonis had gone up one of them nudie bars.
Ah, okay.
And when they left the nudie bar, okay, and went down by Route 9 where she got off the bus, that's when they spotted her. Because, you see, the route to her house from Route 9 is very desolate. And it's not, literally, you have to really be afraid. You really try to get home to walk that route. You know what I mean?
Okay.
All right? You know what I mean? You literally just be oblivious to everything else and say, I know I'm getting ready to get a whooping because I should have been home earlier. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so that's what she was trying to do. And that's
so what time of night are we talking?
About 7:30, 8 o'clock at night.
7:30, 8 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
So it wasn't early in the morning?
No.
Why is I'm under the impression that it was late at night.
No. And you know, there's another thing that Garcia said. He said that Pagonis said, after they came from the nudie bar, he said, I was never here.
Right.
I was never here.
So Garcia was with Pagonis?
Yeah,
no. Well, see, Pagonis and Garcia are very close.
Okay.
Okay. And what literally happened, according to Garcia, was Pagonis wanted some counseling as to how he was going to do this.
Okay.
Okay. You know, and that's why he went to Garcia, because there was no doubt. I mean, nobody questioned their relationship.
Okay.
All right. You know what I mean? When they took the stand, Pagonis admitted, yeah, we were the best of friends. So, you know, it's just like everything else. If you figure that the heat is on you, then you want to get counseling. Now, the reason why I knew that Garcia was telling the truth about the whole thing was because Ralph, who is Tawana's father, right after the incident happened, said, you know, there's a state trooper, a Latino state trooper, that is following us everywhere we go. That's what Ralph said. Now, Garcia does not have privy to this conversation. So when I talked to Garcia, he said, ask Ralph whether there a Latino state trooper that was following him everywhere he went. I knew then it clicked, because that's what Ralph had said all along. And you know, and so this guy said, I was that person because But Gonus told me to watch every move they make and report it back to me. And he said, and that's what I did. Okay? So, and you know, it got so bad that Judge Hickman, once it got to a certain point, he just refused to let the rest of his testimony come out in trial. He just, I'm not going to let the jury hear this.
So how does it feel to be set up like this? And
Well, it feels terrible for me because, look, you know what the bad thing about it? I represent a lot of people who've been set up. So the idea of being set up is
the
not,
norm.
It's norm. It's nothing abnormal about this, you know what I mean?
Okay.
I see this all the time, you know what I mean? I've tried a lot of cases. But the worst case to be involved is where you were set up and you can't get out of it yourself. I've gotten everybody else out of it, you know, and I can't get out of this myself, and that's the worst feeling.
And it's 20 years now.
Yeah.
20 years
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah. And that's the worst feeling. I mean, I've represented people who was framed from A to Z, you know, and in each one of those cases, you know, we got them out most of the time. You know, it's very rarely we didn't, but most of the time we did. But this is one of those cases where you just can't shake it. You haven't shaken it yet, and I'm the kind of person who I don't believe in losing. I mean, you know, if I represent you, I don't care what. I mean, I'm there to the end. I hate to lose. You know, when I tried cases, I died with every case. You know, I literally died because I took it harder than my clients took it. You know what I mean? You know, I mean, at a certain point, it was just like you were just getting ready to have a heart attack or something because you were taking it so hard. You know, in terms of what you knew that they were getting ready to face for the rest of their life. Right. You know, which is very serious. But to get in this situation now where you can't shake this, you know, and you know it's a cover-up. You know, you have all the evidence of it being a cover-up, you know, but nobody wants to touch it. You know, the whole system just said, we don't want to touch this. You know, this is just one that you just need to go somewhere and let us have. And I'm saying I can't let you have this one.
If I may ask, Alton. And there's some people that are going to be watching this that are not going to like this question.
Sure.
I don't really care.
Okay.
What about the Black Bar Association? What about the people in the community who have done this? The people who are supposed to advocate, your colleagues, what of them?
Well, I tell you what's most hurting is the fact that in the 60s, I was involved in the civil rights movement. I was involved in voter registration. I was nearly lynched, you know, by Klansmen in the South for being involved in voter registration. And at that particular time, we had this vision of putting black people in offices and they will make a difference. You know, but what has happened is that I reckon by us being naive and think that we were just dealing on a level playing field, you know, we didn't recognize that these people had the ability to give you sums of money or give you titles or give you positions or give you patronage that would just allow you to look the other way, you know, and that's what you see now. You know, people just say, hey, man, I understand all that, but, you know, I'm not getting ready to mess this up.
You can't fight City Hall?
Well, I reckon you can fight City Hall, but you see, the problem is that the people who fought back then were the Fannie Lou Hamers. Okay. They didn't really care. Right. You see, they weren't concerned about the consequences. You know what I mean? Okay. They were just fighting a struggle. They had a vision of what it took, and they got involved in that struggle to bring that about. And if they died in the process, so be it. But they were just one-minded. You know, they didn't think about nothing else. You know, they didn't think about losing a job, losing this, whatever. You know, but now, you know, with people having material goods, now they're more concerned about preserving what they have. Right. So nobody wants to stick their necks out, you see, in order to try to help somebody else, you know, engage in that struggle. And I reckon with me, I just saw it differently because I knew that whatever I became, I owed it to somebody else. And not only myself, but other lawyers owe the same thing. You know what I mean? Whatever Johnny Cochran became, he owed it to somebody else. All right? Because there was a time when we weren't in these law schools. Okay? You know, I don't care how smart you were. They were not going to give you access to the law. And only through pressure that those kinds of barriers were broken down. And we got that opportunity. And once you get the opportunity, then you can either look forward or you can look backwards. Too many of us just look forward and keep running.
Let me throw another name at you. Elliot Spitzer.
Okay.
I know that there was a deal struck, and we have discussed this in the past. In the strategizing for Elliot Spitzer's run for the New York State Attorney General post, he stated to Reverend Sharpton that once in office, he would move to have your license reinstated.
Absolutely. I mean, that happened.
I've heard him say that in my church.
Oh yeah, no, that happened. I mean, I was brought over to Brooklyn, you know, when it first happened, and he said, you know, Reverend Sharpton, you know, look, you know, we really want to support Elliot Spitzer. But you see, you got to remember, I knew a little bit more about Elliot Spitzer than they did. Now, Elliot Spitzer was not a household name then, okay? But he was in the New York District Attorney's office, all right? Those were the people that also tried to put me behind bars at some point. So I knew more of a history.
Over Tawana?
No.
Okay.
No, this was Michael Stewart case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michael Stewart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was prosecuted, and in fact, I had to go on trial for a month before I was finally acquitted. I mean, and if I had been convicted, I would have, you know, gone to prison, lost everything, you know. But he was all part of that element. So, you know, I just took it that Reverend Sharpton, though, was naive, okay, you know, at the time when he first brought it up. Because I knew Elliot Spitzer. I didn't see how Sharpton could really know him because he's not in that business. You see what I'm saying?
Right, okay.
You know, Reverend Sharpton doesn't really know what goes on in the legal profession, you know, other than what somebody tell him, you know. So I didn't see that, and I told him, you know, I said, I don't really see that. I don't think Elliot Spitzer's going to do that. But, you know, he said, but no, just trust it. You know, it's going to happen. You know, I said, well, hey, if you think it's going to happen, you know, what do I got to lose? Right. I don't think it's going to happen, you know, but, you know, that's it.
Well, what did you have to do in order to get your license back?
Well, I tell you what Sharpton wanted me to do. He didn't, no, there was
Sharpton or Spitzer?
No, there was no quid pro quo between me and Spitzer at all. Okay? What Reverend Sharpton wanted me to do, as he know I am customarily will do, is not to bring up any of the baggage of Elliot Spitzer during the campaign.
Ah, okay.
Okay, because, you know, their theory was that, you know, really Elliot Spitzer is the guy that we can really talk to. Now, I didn't believe that, okay? But, you know, I did say I'll go along with it.
Okay.
All right, and that's what I did.
And you went along with it, and Spitzer's governor now?
Yeah, and
you don't have your license?
Still no conversation.
No. But you see,
what if we send him this tape?
Yeah, well, you can. But you see,
Okay.
because you see, the bottom line is that I've known Elliot Spitzer all these years. You see, and the moral of this story is this: it's too often that people who don't really know these candidates are enticed to actually endorse these candidates without considering all of the baggage that they bring. And so my point is that while we may have flunked on Spitzer, we just can't continue to flunk. You know, every time somebody brings somebody to us, we got to start seriously questioning who those folks are.
Right.
You know, and there's no question about me. I have newspaper articles where Elliot Spitzer said in various of the tabloids, the New York Times, everywhere else, that yes, once I become governor, he told us to black audiences, you know, I will put this man in. And you got to remember now, Spitzer tried to become state attorney general in '94, okay? And he didn't succeed. It then dawned on him that he needed the black vote.
Yes.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So then he came back to us, without first, you know, having to go at it alone. And then when he came back, and the black people turned out in such numbers that he was able to defeat an incumbent, Dennis Vacco. That was unusual. And it was by the slimness of margins, you know, that he defeated. Because, you know, it took about 2 months before they could certify that election.
Right.
That's how close it was. And the black vote was very critical to his success. And the campaign promise about being reinstated was very critical to that, because at that time, we were talking about 10 years after I had already been suspended from the practice of law.
I would like to jump to another case, and we don't have much time.
Okay.
The Central Park Johnson case.
Right.
Your defendant in that case, I can't remember the gentleman.
Michael Briscoe.
Michael Briscoe. He was the only defendant in that case to walk out of court.
That's correct.
And subsequently, the actual perpetrator has come forward in that case.
Right.
I would say through divine intervention, more so than anything else, in meeting one of the convicted individuals
Right, sure.
in the day room of a state prison.
Right.
And this young man had said he had come to meet Jesus Christ and become a Christian, and he said he had to confess everything that he had done, not only to God but to man. And when he came forward to speak of everything and every detail in that case, the DA still refused to accept his story.
Right, Linda Fairstein. Right.
And she has written books, goes on speaking circuits,
Sure.
all for that case.
Yeah, and 5 innocent young men went to prison for no reason at all. And, you know, I said that from the beginning. The media attacked me from saying that they were railroading these boys. And Linda Fairstein now has not missed a day's work, which is contrary to Michael Nifong down there in Duke. I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You know, if you're going to do one thing, you ought to do the other, you know.
We've run out of time, but I like to make you an offer to come back at least once a month so we can go over this. But I mean, this is the most fascinating story I've heard. And I mean, it's just a pleasure to have you here.
Well, I appreciate
Mr.
it very
Maddox.
much.
And your brilliant mind needs to be on the case again. And hopefully we can do that.
Well, you know,
right.
Graham knows exactly where I am, and
Okay.
that's not a problem.
Well, take us out, Graham.
I'll just make sure the next time I get a reservation for parking space.
We'll have a limo for you.
All right.
That's what we're doing.
Well, you heard it, you heard it.
Right.
Okay. Once again, this has been another installment of the Gilchrist Experience. My name is Graham Weatherspoon. The God in me loves the God in you. Alton, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And my regards to Leona.
All right, thank you very much.
And the grandkids.
Absolutely,
Okay.
right. Yeah.
God bless. Thank you much.
Thank you. That's a wrap. That was brilliant.
See, this
Who taught you to hate the color of your skin? Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God